So we've been talking about data and insights within marketing, but how do you make sure you get the team that produces those results right? Well, one man who has some insight on that is Finn Raben at ESOMAR. What have you been telling these guys here?
Well, thank you, James. Lovely to chat with you. We had a very interesting session yesterday, actually, based on a piece of work that we did just prior to Christmas on how end clients, on how brand owners can optimize their insights function. I think today, with the vast increase in the amount of data that's available to people, the trick is how do we understand it, how do we communicate it, and how do we ensure that it gets through the organization in order to be able to effectively guide their decision making. That's a large challenge for many different organizations.
So in a nutshell, what have you got to do? If there are so many components to the collection of data, the processing of data, the kind of driving the insights out of it, what should a team look like?
Well, I think the team needs to firstly ensure that all the work that they do is specifically focused on a business issue. And I know that sounds rather facile, but you can easily, get scope creep and be distracted by other things. The insights function needs to be truly empowered to contribute to the business. I think where you don't have a sponsor or a mentor at the C-suite level, then largely the business of insights tends to take a secondary place to gut feel. But as one company put it, the managing director said to them, look, you're all great retailers, you're all great sellers, go with your gut. And the marketing director said, yes, but insight feeds your gut. And I think that's really the story behind making sure that in order to contribute, you've got to allow for each department and each source of data to have a relevance and a prominence in the story that you tell ultimately to the business.
You talked about setting up a team to be sort of fit for purpose. Is that to avoid this idea that the data and insights team is just a siloed little group within marketing, go and speak to the spreadsheet guys type of thing? You think that it needs to be at the heart of the marketing function?
Yes, it certainly does. I think the optimal structure that we've seen is where you have data scientists or data analysts actually spread across all the functional areas of a company, where the insights is more of a coordinating role rather than necessarily a primary data gathering role. So there would be companies such as Heineken that have data scientists in their finance department and their logistics department, and Insights coordinates all of their activities in order to ultimately produce a holistic and a truly contextual story for the board based on hard evidence. And that does seem to be the model that works the best.
We're talking about data, there's a huge amount of it out there. Something that ESOMAR was talking about last year was a kind of reminder to brands and companies and organisations about who actually owns that data. What is your take on that, and where do you think the industry is moving towards?
Well, I think with the explosion in data, we have an increased obligation to ensure that we respect it. Our trade, our profession can only work with the information that is provided by contributors, be they consumers, citizens, companies, whatever. And certainly here in Europe, we've had the advent of the General Data Protection Regulation, which puts some of those obligations into a legal context. But I think our profession has always been based on an ethical stance. And I don't mean that in the sort of the old traditional Bible-thumping way, but it is respecting the obligations that we have. Just, people are very happy to share information, but just because I use Google Maps, which I understand is a free app and I can get great benefits from it, doesn't mean that I'm also letting Google get my photos and my contacts and my financial data. So just be clear and transparent about that. From a corporate perspective, certainly data is the new oil, and I think most companies would recognize that an analysis of the data that they have available to them is the way to generate competitive advantage. I'll be talking about this a little later on today, but in those instances where companies do have access to information, if they receive it, it isn't necessarily theirs. The data remains in the ownership, if you like, of the contributors. And that is an ethical obligation, or maybe that's too strong a word, maybe it's an element that companies have to recognize to say, I may be able to use this data, but if somebody wants it back, I equally have to make sure I give it back. And they have to
use rather than exploit.
Yes, and I think there are enough examples today of the exploitation of data where it is an urban myth that innovation can only really be furthered by the surreptitious use of data. We have quite some evidence in the ESOMAR library about how that is a myth, and that the more you tell people, actually, the more they are willing to participate and contribute their information. So yes, I think that's, use, don't abuse is the strapline, if there is one.
Finn, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, James.
Hi, I'm James Wright and thanks for watching Marketing Media Money. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thanks for watching.